Two Tiers revisited, really, because I'd already written a short piece which was on the website. So this is just a sort of an update. But so any suggestion of a two-tier system, whether it's relating to general government, policing or the judiciary, is immediately dismissed by the left and mainstream media as a right-wing conspiracy theory. And yet each day brings fresh examples of just such a system embedded at all levels of government. The blatantly different treatment of left-right and white-black is now instantly recognisable even to those who are not politically engaged. For my talk today, I will cover just a few of the recent cases, and I'll also later refer back to a few historic cases. So, Mike Jones and myself had been talking about Councillor Ricky Jones, you know, the Dartford councillor, his throat-cutting threats, and I suggested that I would like to contest any by-election that may arise due to his suspension. Mike thought it unlikely that I could, as I didn't live in the borough of Dartford. I live in London, in the London borough of Greenwich. However, while reading up on the case, I noticed that Jones had been arrested at a South London address, and Dartford is in Kent, so yeah. Mike suggested that I should write a piece on the Ricky Jones case for the website. However, as the Jones case was ongoing, I was unable to say too much, although I did offer the opinion that the case had all the elements of being kicked into the long grass, and that it would be interesting to see if bail was granted when it had been specifically denied to many writers charged with much less serious crimes. Jones' provisional trial date is set for the 29th of January next year, and so I set up a Google alert in order not to miss any developments. I knew that there was a pre-trial set for the 25th of October, so I was expecting to receive alerts on the outcome, but none were forthcoming. So I then Googled Ricky Jones and came across a Freedom of Information request submitted on the 23rd of October to the Metropolitan Police Service, requesting to know the rationale behind the decision to grant bail. So bail had obviously been granted to him, nothing much in the media. So where similar cases in the same time frame had been denied bail on far less serious offences. That's the benefits of being Labour, a man of colour, and not being forced to plead guilty as the other defendants seem to have been. So, anyway, I'm now going to speak about Judge Tanwir Ikram, because he figures in a lot of these cases. So, Judge when I Google searched what nationality is Tan Ikram, because it's an odd name, isn't it? We thought he might be Chinese or something, but so back came British. So Tanwir Ikram is British, but he's a Pakistani Muslim, and he has been given a CBE for his services to diversity. I mean, well, that is like services to his own self-interest, isn't it? This is just a quote from ex-Twitter on August the 10th. Right, so they're saying, Judge Tan Ikram presided over paraglider girl's case. This was like, we'll go into that later. He's the judge now dealing with the Ricky Jones case. The political leanings of this judge are widely known. These days, even online speech in relatively private settings prompts UK judges to issue prison time if that speech is deemed to be right-wing. Meanwhile, speech at left-wing protests gets no such treatment. In 2022, Judge Tan Ikram sent James Watts to prison for 20 weeks after Watts sent memes mocking George Floyd to a group chat. Later, Ikram gave no punishment to 3 women who were charged under the Terrorism Act for attending a pro-Palestinian protest while wearing jackets that had images of Hamas-inspired paragliders. This is a case that the previous comment was relating to. Even though all 3 of these women were found guilty, perhaps unsurprisingly, Ikram was caught liking a LinkedIn post that called for a free Palestine, which he subsequently claimed was inadvertently done due to a double click. He was issued formal advice for also having breached guidance on social media and making it known on LinkedIn that he was a judge, and it's seen as giving a perception of bias. Judicial guidance plainly states that judges who are known to have strong views on a particular subject should consider recusing themselves, that's excusing themselves, from related cases. In addition, social media guidance also warns that liking posts can convey information about yourself and your views. The original formal advice was subsequently increased to a formal warning by the Lord Chancellor and Lady Chief Justice, stating that the judge's actions caused significant reputational damage to the judiciary. However, Ikram faced no disciplinary action. Judge Ikram is, it seems, a master when it comes to delivering 2-tier justice, as it was also he who presided over the prosecution of PC Perry Lathwood in July 2023. PC Lathwood had arrested and handcuffed a black woman for refusing to show a bus ticket, although it later transpired that she had paid. PC Lathwood was convicted of assault by Judge Ikram and suspended from his job with the Roads and Transport Policing Command. In September this year, PC Lathwood's appeal was upheld, but he still faces a police misconduct process. Met Police Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe acknowledged that the incident had divided opinions, but she added, the impact it had, particularly on black communities in Croydon and further afield, was significant. Shouldn't Assistant Commissioner Rolfe have at the same time acknowledged the impact that this event may have had on the police community? This is taken from a March 2024 article in The Spectator reporting on Judge Ikram. And they say, at the very least, he has been both imprudent and injudicious. Whatever the strict legalities, his failure to withdraw from the paraglider trial left an unfortunate impression of partiality. There is something curious in sentencing a private sharer of unacceptable jokes much more severely than a public supporter of terrorism. His later publicising of the cases involving police goes against the expectation that judges should not talk publicly about controversial cases they hear. So, yeah, I'll now move on to sort of individual cases of like rioters being arrested and charged and imprisoned. So Lucy Connolly, she's a Conservative Northamptonshire councillor's wife. She was arrested in August and remanded in custody after Facebook post calling for mass deportation of asylum seekers. She did call for arson attacks as well. In September, she was charged with publishing material likely to stir up racial hatred, to which she was advised to plead guilty. I mean, this is the thing, like, you know, these writers were all, most of them, you know, they're encouraged to plead guilty. So Lucy was being charged with something that might, however unknowingly, have facilitated writing. The judge said the sentence of a 2.5-year prison term was to punish and deter, which, like the oft-heard make an example, is only ever targeted at us, never at minority wrongdoers. Contrast this with the conditional discharge that Judge Ikram had handed down to the 3 female paraglide protesters. Ikram had opined at the time emotions ran very high on this issue, talking about these 3 women, or even the absence of any action against Nick Lowles of Hate Not Hope for his August X post relating to acid being thrown in Muslim women's faces, which definitely did lead to violent Muslim gangs taking to the streets. So a physical call to slit the throats of rioters, i.e. us natives, gets bail and kicked into the long grass, while an online post urging mass deportation of asylum seekers, i.e. foreign criminals, gets a 31-month stretch. Right, I'll move on to Peter Lynch. So, you know, you've all seen a lot of you will have seen the meme circulating, contrasting the fate of Ricky Jones and the sadly recently deceased rioter Peter Lynch, who was serving 2 years and 8 months for being part of the Holiday Inn Express riot in Rotherham, where he shouted racist and provocative remarks, and this is in quotes from the trial, towards police and called asylum seekers child killers, which it turns out they are. The judiciary knew that white rioters like Lynch were likely to be at the receiving end of violence from Muslim inmates once they arrived in prison, and who knows what Peter Lynch might have been subjected to before he died, because I don't know whether there's been an inquest on it. Ricky Jones will enjoy Christmas with his family, while Peter Lynch was effectively killed by political persecution. Right, Chris Carber is the next one, which, yeah, most of you will have heard of him as well. Carber was shot dead by police in Streatham in 2022 when he refused to stop in a car, which the police knew to have been used as a getaway in a shooting 2 days previously. The BBC were, I feel, instrumental in stirring up hatred when they reported that Carber had been shot in cold blood. And I think this is what the BBC often do in their early, unsubstantiated coverage of any killings of blacks. They stir up feelings in the black community, or is it the communities now? Firearms officer Martin Blake was charged with Carber's murder, but the jury was not told of Carber's criminal record of gang-related violence. However, it seems that sense prevailed in this case and Blake was cleared of murder, after which it was revealed that Carber had shot a man twice in a nightclub just days before being stopped by the police. So, Next, I'll move on to Axel Ruda Cubana. And again, this is sort of like the Ricky Jones thing. This is like it's live at the moment. But anyway, I think it's widely acknowledged that it was the perception by the public that they were not being given the full facts relating to the Southport murders suspect that was largely responsible for the August riots. And not the fact that Farage had questioned it, online. People were sent to prison just for reposting tweets claiming that the killer was a recently arrived Muslim asylum seeker. Well, strictly speaking, that is not. But anyway, they were right in some respects. So I know that, like the Ricky Jones case, this case is live, and therefore I cannot say too much, but I will say that the police were desperate to get it out there that this was a British citizen born in Wales with devoutly Christian parents, and it definitely was not terror-related. I mean, how they can state these things so early on, I don't know, but they do. As I said, those who suggest there is a two-tier system at play are dubbed far-right conspiracy theorists. I would call them truth-tellers, as they are just echoing what many retired as well as serving police officers admit themselves. And as my colleague Matt Godden stated in his talk at the last meeting relating to the Macpherson report, subsequent legislation actually impels police officers to be culturally sensitive, i.e. adopt a hands-off approach when dealing with minorities, lest they start a riot or bring racism charges. However, no such restraint seems to be required when dealing with the native population. Even in cases involving black perpetrators with white victims, any whiff of racism on the part of the victim will incline a jury towards a not guilty verdict. Conversely, white perpetrator with a black victim seems to default towards a guilty verdict, even without any evidence of racism. Having served as a juror myself on several cases involving minorities, I've seen this firsthand. I'm just going to briefly talk about Stephen Lawrence, actually, because if you're talking about two-tier policing and justice, you've got to talk about him. But I'll also say something about Terry Gregory, someone that's like, So I'm an Eltham resident myself, and so I know all about the ultimate example of two-tier policing, government and justice, the 1993 Stephen Lawrence case, the case that keeps on giving to the black community and a corresponding continuing source of persecution of the white community. Government, that's Labour's Tony Blair, even changed the law of double jeopardy. That's where you can't bring a case, you can't do another retrial if you haven't got any new evidence or whatever. But anyway, they managed to change that law, which obviously had been around for a long time. He changed that in 2003 in order to pursue new lines of inquiry in the Lawrence case. So contrast that with another local murder in Charlton. Now, you wouldn't have heard of this. Well, you may have done, but yeah. So this was of a 19-year-old white man, Terry Gregory, in 2003 by West Indian George Edwin. All the evidence pointed to Edwin's guilt, but he walked free. He even admitted in the trial, of having the knife. So he had the knife, but he can't remember using it. And he'd actually gone home to get the knife as well, so it was premeditated. So So all the evidence pointed at his guilt, but after 2 trials in a London Crown Court, ended in deadlock, Judge Jonathan Vanderwerf ruled it would be cruelly onerous for the pensioner, this is Edwin, to face a third trial. Possible hints at racism combined with faulty direction by the judges had helped to influence the juries in their failure to reach a verdict. You know, this is one of those cases where the victim, they were sort of making insinuations that he might have been, you know, just because someone had put a wreath, you know, where he'd been killed, put a Union Jack or a Union wreath or something, yeah? So no seat in the House of Lords like Doreen Lawrence for Terry's grieving mother, Sue Gregory, who, in a cruel twist of fate, lost her remaining son. This is Terry's younger brother, Billy, almost 2 years to the day later, in 2005, to another foreign murderer, Vietnamese in this case. He did go to prison, but as I say, no seat in the House of Lords for Sue Gregory. Also in the same sort of area, an unofficial memorial to Lee Rigby, murdered by Muslim fanatics in Woolwich in 2013, has been removed and replaced by a memorial in the nearby Garrison Church due to concerns that it had become a shrine for patriots. Had it remained, would police officers arrive periodically to clean it up, as they do with Stephen Lawrence's? And we know this because when we were going around, when I was standing in that area, because I've stood in the area where that Stephen Lawrence Memorial is, one of the houses we knocked on, he said, the police turn up in a car, they get out and they clean it up. I would also remind you that PA, Patriotic Alternative, Sam Melia, is still languishing in prison, 2 years for distributing stickers with slogans such as, "White Britons will be a minority in their own country by 2060, something which is statistically true and a headline that is featured in many mainstream media outlets. The Independent in 2010, the Daily Mail in 2016, and more recently, the Telegraph. However, as we know, the truth is no defence, if you're on the right, that is. Sam has missed the birth of his second child, and his family faced Christmas without him, unlike Joneses. Sorry, Mike, it's unfortunate, the name. I would also just mention that the August Pakistani Muslim attacks on police at Manchester Airport, which resulted in a female officer having her nose broken, has yet to get to court. The defendants remain out on bail. In BNP days, we were always reminded that the multicultural nightmare created by successive Labour and Tory governments would only be maintained by severe suppression of any dissent by the natives, and that is just what we are seeing played out at the moment. As Adrian Romilly, sadly, Adrian has not come today, but he's not feeling too good apparently. As Adrian Romilly suggested at, I think it was last year's AGM, we need to push for fair treatment and equality in the law for us, the Indigenous people of this land. We are the only group lacking any advocacy or pressure group looking out for our interests. Until we have such, we need to highlight this blatant two-tiering whenever it arises. Thank you.